All right, let's talk a few things about math.
Math.
That's what y'all signed up to take, wasn't it?
No, we didn't sign up to take math. We signed up to take programming.
But in programming, you're going to need to know your order of operations so that you get it to do any math type things correctly. We talked about integer variables and real variables the other day. And that then you got to do calculations with those numbers, with either numbers or the variables. And about how you put them in when you're putting them into the computer. So if you're putting the formula in, you are going to do it a little differently than you did it or do it in math. If you're going to do multiplication in math, what did you normally do? What two ways did you show multiplication?
2 ways. Usually you just multiply.
If you want to multiply a variable and a number, how did you show that you were going to be multiplying those two things when you did an equation for it?
We're talking about like just adding the number that many times.
No. You're complicating it.
Yeah.
That we're going to write down an equation and we want to show that we're doing multiplication there. We want to multiply y 2 times to get x. What would we write up there? Actually, we wouldn't do that. We put something equal x. What do we put?
So let's say like 2 times 2 equals.
Okay, how did you write that? Okay, we'll multiply 2 and y. How would you write 2 times y?
I'll put it in an asterisk. So
In math. In math.
Just x.
So you put an x right there, right? Quite often. Okay? This gives you a problem on the fact that x could be a variable, okay? But in math, it was an x was your time symbol. What other way did you represent it?
An asterisk, a star, whatever you want to call it.
Could, but not normally. That wasn't a normal math thing on it. Because if we were doing 2 times 2, you did 2 times 2. Okay?
You never used asterisks or stars or whatever you want to call it.
Not really in math that you don't. It is, though you've done a little bit more now because what we're going to do in just a minute. But just from a purely mathematical viewpoint, they did x's. Okay, was the multiplication sign. Or what was the how did you do it implied?
So I have the number, right?
You just did 2x or 2y equals x. And if you just had the 2 right beside each other, it was an assumed or implied multiplication.
Yeah.
Okay? Now you know what I'm talking about? Okay? Neither of those ways is going to work putting it into the computer. Because in this case, the computer's not going to know if that's an x or if that was a multiplication symbol. Okay? So we're going to use an asterisk instead of an x. And sometimes in math they are going to asterisks now because if you go to do anything to the computer or you look on the calculator, some of the calculators even got asterisks instead of x's there, but a lot of them still got an x there for the multiplication sign. Okay, now if we look at the calculator in Windows, it probably is an asterisk But remember, that was computer people wrote that one. So they're going to be thinking asterisk for a multiplication symbol. The implied, it really doesn't, the computer doesn't know what to do about implied things. So you just really can't imply things to the computer because it's not sure what you're implying right there. Okay? So you're going to have to use an asterisk always for your multiplication. If you're raising to a power, okay? If you did it on back there in math, you just did a subscript up above. So if we wanted y squared, we did y with a superscript of a 2. Okay? On the computer, you don't have on your keyboard a superscript ability easily. Yeah, we could special character it, but that's going to really get confusing when it gets back into the programming. So to do that, you're going to do a double asterisk on most languages, or sometimes they're going to use the caret symbol or housetop, it's called sometimes, which is that little one that looks like that. That is...
The up arrow looking character. Shift 6.
Above the 6 on this keyboard, but it can move. But as a caret symbol is what it actually is, but you'll hear it called a lot of times the housetop because it looks like a roof line. Okay? Is everybody with me on that one? So to raise to a power, it's a double asterisk on the computer. So you're going to have to use double asterisks when you do yours because you're putting it on into the computer in logarithm, okay? Mod, the modulus operator, which you're not going to do very often, you just use the word mod to separate the two numbers. And what that's doing is you're dividing the first number by the second number and getting the remainder. Does everybody follow on that? So in their case of their example in the book of 17 mod 3 would give us 2. Okay? Because the remainder is 2. 17 divided by 3 is 5 with 2 remainder. Everybody follow that part? And they throw that one always out at you in the books, but you're going to very seldom ever do mod arithmetic. Okay? That's just not something people usually ever use. Addition is going to be just like you did before with the plus sign. Subtraction uses the dash just like you've always been used to, so that one's no problem. Division, you don't have the mathematical division symbol on your keyboard.
Slash.
So you're going to use a slash, which actually you could use sometimes in math, and then sometimes it was writing one over the other, and just change that middle line there to a slash and you got it solved. Okay? So it slash works nicely on that one. And the asterisk really isn't bad for multiplication, and actually whatever I'm doing now, if I did ever do have a math problem to do, I throw asterisks in there anyway. But that's because predominant of what I've done for the last 30 some years is computer stuff, so asterisks what I always think of for multiplication sign. I sort of forget that X even exists as a multiplication sign. Okay, does everybody follow on that part? So that's how you're going to put your formulas in. Remember also in the computer where the answer goes on the left and the equation goes on the right, where in math you usually did it this other direction. You had the stuff on the left equals and gave the answer to the right. Not always, but a lot of times. Okay? So it is a little reversal on that one, that your answer goes to the left. Okay? But you just have to tick that up. Next one that you definitely need to know, and you should have learned in math, but if you're like most people, you didn't pick it up there for some reason or another, is the hierarchy or order of operations. Do y'all all know that one?
Yep.
What comes first?
Parentheses.
Parentheses.
Please excuse my dear self.
Anything inside parentheses is going to be done, calculated first. What comes second?
Exponents.
Exponential, which we said we're going to use the double asterisk usually for, although it could be the caret, okay? What comes next?
Multiply.
Multiplication and division. And what comes next?
Addition and subtraction.
Addition and subtraction. And if they're on the equal level, what order are we going to do them in?
If they're on equal level?
Mm-hmm. So if you got several things on the same level, what order does the stuff get done in? Work left to right. Start from the left, doing the things on the same level to the right, and then work on the stuff on the next level. And that's the way most of us read, and that English is written in, although I have run into a couple of people that actually read it backwards somehow.
You're serious?
I'm serious. And you do have other languages that do read backwards, okay? I think Chinese reads backwards, if I remember right. And actually, according to them, it's not backwards, we're backwards.
Yeah.
Okay? That they read right to left.
That'd be weird.
And I don't remember what language it is, but there is some language out there that actually reads from bottom to top.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
Okay? But it's some obscure something language. And I don't remember where it's from or anything. But I know Chinese is the right to left, and I'm not sure if that's all the Oriental languages or not. But I know Chinese fits into that. And I'm assuming that's all versions of Chinese, but I don't know. Because actually your different dialects of Chinese can get totally different. But we're used to left to right anyway, so solving it left to right makes sense for you anyway. So if it is on the same level, you do solve from left to right. Parentheses always moves anything to the top, okay? So if you've got an equation and you need stuff done not working correctly left to right, parentheses will take care of your problem for you. If in doubt, use your parentheses. Because if you throw parentheses in there, it's not needed, it's not going to cause any problems to you, okay? So I say a lot of people fail to get that order of operations somehow along in math. I really don't remember it taught to me when I was in school. I think we were just supposed to somehow along the way that we sort of were assumed to have known it, and then I hit students. Y'all all said y'all knew what it was, but I have hit plenty of students in programming classes that had no idea in the world about it. They thought everything was done from left to right, that it was all equal level. And it's not. Okay? Questions on that? Or that they had no concept about using the parentheses in there. So when they wanted to average something, they tell it to add the first, the second, the third item, divide it by 3, and because they didn't throw any parentheses in there, they came up with a real weird answer. Because in that case, you do need the parentheses sitting there.
right here it says English speakers, Greek, or well, when Romans conquered Greek, they applied the same rules, reading or writing left to right, reading top to bottom. Arabic and Hebrew, Chinese and Japanese read from right to left. But
Yeah, that's
apply the
right.
same-
Hebrew does too. I forgot about Hebrew.
It doesn't say nothing about like
A bottom to top.
maybe it's in a different area, but in this right here it doesn't say nothing about it.
I know I've heard something about something used.
And then
Bottom.
there's the Egyptians that instead of using letters, they use hieroglyphics. So pictures and all that. So that's pretty neat.
So, see what you learn in my classes?
We all just learn computers, we learn everything, history.
All right. So, y'all got any questions on how we do formulas in there and then the order of operations? Because those are going to be important to you because a lot of stuff, most of the stuff you do in a computer is you're calculating things. Okay? That no matter what it is you put in, that you got lots of word stuff goes in there, but you're normally in a program trying to calculate something. Now there's plenty of programs that don't calculate something, but even at programs that you don't think about calculating something, think about your word as a word processor. We think about that just using words, right? Guess what else it does? If you go and look at the summary on it, it will tell you how many letters and words you've got in your document. Guess what? It just did a calculation. And if you ever have to write a specific number of word paper, that's really handy. When I started writing my newspaper column, they told me they didn't want over about 500 words, and so the first so many of them, I'd sit there and look at that to see how had I done on that. Then after I'd written a little while, after I'd written about 30 of them, they sort of, and I'd send them something, sometimes something shorter and sometimes something longer. It didn't bother them. That they would fit it any way, that as long as I tried to keep it concise to what I was answering. And that they recognize there's occasionally the topic that you really can't get it answered in 500 words. No matter what you try to do, and when you're trying to keep it simplified down. And I'm trying to remember what in the world we mentioned in Comp 1000 this morning that I thought would make a good article, and I'm going to think of that one yet. I was going, that would make a good article for me to write this week. I may have to just send a note to the students in that class and go, what did I say when y'all asked on something that I answered that I thought would be a good article? It was a good basic information question. Now a couple of them didn't know, because some of the ones in Comp 1000 don't know hardly anything about the computers. And I've been trying to think of that one since. They then talked about, we declared the variables, we told you on that one. All you're doing is creating a space in the memory for that variable. Some languages you do not have to declare variables, they self-declare. First time you use them, that they automatically declare at that point. However, if it's going to get used on the right side of the formula, it's got to have been either declared before or used before. Because when you declare it, if you declare it as a numeric value, it's going to make it a value of 0 to start with. Okay? And if you hadn't declared it, it's sitting there going, I have no idea in the world what value, and it doesn't know how to do math on it, because it really is a null value at that point. Okay. And then a lot of them will throw you an error if you don't declare it. So you go through and talk about that. If you are doing a calculation, it's got to be only on numeric variables and numbers. It can't be on string variables. Okay? Now you can actually convert number values to string, and you can actually do a conversion of string variables back to numbers in some languages. Okay? And particularly if you declared something as string and then you needed to use it and it actually was a number and you needed to use it as a number. Sometimes that does occur. And you can actually change your name to a number too using that method, because they'll just pull some type of numeric value out of it, and there's a system to it. Make sure you know the difference between the integer and the real. Constants are just where we've assigned what would be a variable name, but a variable name technically by being variable, that means it changes values. A constant is where you assigned a value to a variable and it stays the same value all the way through the running of the program. Now if you're sitting there going, why would I want to use a constant name for some numeric value? There's reasons to do that. It makes maintenance of the program a whole lot easier. For instance, if you're doing one that is a payroll program, well, that calculates sales tax for people. That is cash register program, essentially. And it does the sales tax to figure out what the total amount they owe is. If there's several places in the program that it calculates that sales tax, you're going to have to put in there several times of what the tax rate is, which 7% around here right now? Or is it 8% here?
Maybe 7.
I think it's still 7 here. Some parts of the state is 8%, okay? And actually I think there's one county in the state that's still 6%. But if we put that in there as a literal in there each place we were calculating it, the legislature this year may raise the sales tax rate, or the voters here may vote in another sales tax penny increase for some purpose, to fix the roads, build new schools, whatever, okay? When that occurs, you've got to go back in and change that tax rate throughout that program. If you did it as a constant, all you got to do is go in, look, and you should have declared it at the beginning of the program. Look at the beginning of the program where all constants are declared. Look there to find the sales tax rate of whatever variable was assigned to that, which tax rate would be a good name for it, and change it right there from 7% to 5%, because they suddenly voted a tax decrease here just to baffle everybody. That never occurs. We could change it in that one place and the program works perfectly fine at that point. If it was all throughout it, we got to dig all the way through the code and find everywhere in there that 8% was the tax rate, but 8% may also be that we're a restaurant and that we put a mandatory 8% tip on every bill. You follow? And then you'd have to tell apart which 8% needs changed to 5% and which 8% not to touch. Because if he's a server at the restaurant, he's sure not going to want us to change the tip rate from 8% to 5%. But if he's a customer there, he definitely wants them to cut the tax rate from 8% to 5% for his bill. Did we follow that part? So if you did goof it up, you probably are going to make some people happy and some people mad. Okay? And the mad ones are your problem. The happy ones aren't going to bother to tell you about it. But if it was a payroll program, it's very likely to have different places in it where it does the tax rates. And if you had them all at one place, and guess what? Income tax rates change every year. Almost every year they change rates on that. Social Security tax rate, the rates on Social Security usually stays the same, but what's the maximum that you earn having to pay? Social Security keeps changing year to year. And then where we're looking this year, that for this coming year that the income tax rate's probably going to change for in 2018, because that's what the Congress and the President have been saying. They're going to cut tax rates on us, but they're also going to do some other changes too, so it's going to have all kinds of effects out there on the program. And the least amount of spots you're going to find it in there, the more likely your program won't mess up. So a constant will take care of that for you. Okay? Likewise, you can use string constants for what your headings on the pages, that you could write the program, for instance, a payroll program that could be used by different organizations, and set a constant at the beginning of the program that gives the name of the company, that's then used to print out every time you print the name of the company on it. And then they just have to enter in there what their company name is when they run it, and it works correctly for them, and it's the same program that the next company's using also, and it's just entering the name at that point and using it as a constant through the program. Hand tracing a program, they mention about that to find, as they put it, to find hard to find errors in a program, and that's where you sit there and actually do the program by hand to try to find where it bombed it. Flowgorithm takes care of part of that for you, so there's not as much need to hand trace a program. But you'll sit there and write down what the values of each variable is and constant, and then every time it changes, write down what the new value is, and then catch when all of a sudden it goes off with a value that doesn't belong there, that it went wrong, and that then you know there's where you made a mistake. Documenting a program, a couple of ways that you'll document it. One is you'll put line comments or block comments into it, and that's just putting comments in the program. Block comments is where you put a section at the top. Usually it can be a section anywhere down through it, and where it's multiple lines on it of information. At the top, it helps to have a comment there that says what this program does. Okay? And then down through the program on certain lines, you may want to put a comment on that line explaining what did you do on that line. That you've got some complicated formula sitting there. You may want to have it written out in plain or math format beside it to explain, or just a sentence there saying, a statement saying, this calculates tax, to explain what your code is. Now, the object is so that Todd writes the program. It works fine. Programs last a good while. Now, they'll claim that programs are only good for about 3 to 5 years at most. Hate to break it to y'all, but that's not real world. In most cases out there, people use programs a whole lot longer than 3 to 5 years. It's sort of like they claim PCs get replaced every 3 to 5 years also. I suspect if I ask all 4 of you how old your machine is, one of you is going to tell me that you get a new machine every 6 months. The other 3 of you are going to sit there and go, I get the best thing I can get, and then it's got to last me 3 or 4 years, because nobody's going to give me enough money to buy another machine like I want to replace it for 3 or 5 years or whatever. And that if you look around at other people, and y'all are more likely to be changing machines more often because you need the most power on it usually, because y'all are more likely doing games and streaming video on it, that you ask some other people, look around at computers other people are using, and look at the age. I've already mentioned in here, I think, where my computer at home is 8 years old, if I'm thinking right, but I bought a bleeding edge one at that point, and it's actually still current on it, other than I had to add memory to it the time I've replaced the hard drive. But the processor's still, it's sitting there as a quad core 3 gigahertz machine.
Yeah,
So,
mine's about half the age of yours.
but you're still sitting there on the higher end of what they're saying on age.
Yeah.
Okay?
My
Pro,
processor is a octa-core, 3.5 gigahertz.
you know, but with what I'm doing, if I got one like yours, some things would speed up, but it wouldn't make us, it wouldn't make a big enough difference to me at this point for me to go spend the money on it.
I also have a 4 gigs of video memory graphics card.
And I've got, actually, I think my video card may be up there, because I've replaced a video card a couple of times in there. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I wanted something that I could at least,
Because I really need to replace the video card right now, because it's really not a strong enough one for me now.
I would suggest either the GTX 1050 or the 1060.
I think my brother has the 1050.
Yeah, the 1050 is a really small version.
Yeah, I think
It's only It's only a 2 gig, but the 1060 is a 3 gig.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, the 1070 is more the higher end, and it's a 4 gig. And the 1080 is the highest tier that they have right now, and that's an 8 gig.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Because like last night, usually it doesn't give a problem, but last night with what I was doing on there, where I'm converting the audio file, I was editing an audio file. I had Movie Maker running, converting an audio file to a movie file, to a video file, and that eats resources on the video card. Even though it's not showing anything on the screen, but the video card is getting hit hard with that, converting to the video file. It kept beeping at me on and off while it sat there doing that for the hour and a half or whatever. Kept right on running and everything, but it kept telling me it was being maxed out on it. And then I was sitting there running Photoshop also and bringing in pictures in there and editing. And I didn't see any slowdown on that part, and I actually was doing my shortcut on that one because I've automated the process, so I'm doing faster. And that was when I got that machine. That the previous machine had just gotten too slow on editing pictures. I was going, this takes too long as I'd sit there and work. And when I got that machine, it worked happily along. And like I say, if I went and got his machine, put Photoshop on his machine and went to edit my pictures, I'd see a difference on it, but I'm not sure it's really worth the money on it difference yet. So you do want to document the program, because like I said, Todd writes the program. A couple of years later, we need to modify the program. Is Todd going to still be there? He may or may not be. If he is there, is Todd going to remember what he wrote in that program 3 years ago?
Probably not unless he made comments.
Unless he made comments in there, he probably doesn't remember what all he did in there. If I've got to pick up the program because Todd's not there anymore, and he doesn't have comments in it, I've got to figure out what in the world was he doing with what these variables were. Because Todd may have decided to really do some freaky variable names.
Whenever I first started programming, my code was sloppy and horrible, and I didn't space out anything. So you just see hundreds of lines of just nonsense, no comments or anything.
And depending on whether or not you have nicely spaced it on lines, etc. If you read my HTML, you can tell HTML that I've turned out as something quick and dirty that I'm going to replace soon after, but I needed to get something out there real quick, versus something that I've put out there that I've done the finishing touch on. It's very readable. Okay. And actually, like when I do the BB gun match in the summer and they give me I get the scores and they're in Excel format. I will initially do that in really dirty format, because I'll just generate web pages through Excel with the scores on there. They don't look real good, but they got the scores there, and the kids and their parents can look out there and see what all their scores were real quick. And then over the next month or so, I go through and clean up all 20 of those pages or something and get them looking nice and clean, and the code looks good. But Microsoft's code that it generates through Excel or through Word is really, really dirty, their HTML code. So you do want it documented well so that somebody else can figure out what to do with it. I mentioned the other day where I got handed that program when I was at PMSC that had been used for 20 years, and the place knew how to change a couple of things they needed to change, but then when it needed Y2K updating, because it was using 2-digit years on it, that they came back to us to fix it because we wrote it. And the people weren't in the company any longer that wrote it, and the company had even changed languages along the way. And when I looked at it, I knew what I was looking at, and I could tell some of what was on it, but I had to go find the documentation to know what in the world the variable names were. It wasn't that they had done really weird variable names, but the organization had from the beginning had guidelines on how to name variables, which each position in the name of the variable told you something about what table it fit with, what it was used with, where it came from. The only problem is they changed their naming convention over the years. And so I had to go find the documentation for it to find out what in the world are these things to be able to then modify the program as it needed modifying. So do document on it, okay? And that had been somebody had happily used a program they'd bought for 20 years and never had been other than maintenance updates, like on, in their case it was insurance policies, changing what rates were and that type of thing. It had never been really updated, and they were still using that original one. And I wouldn't be surprised if that company's not still using, here 20 years later, that same program back from that original with my modifications in '97. Okay? Because they were, why spend the money on just getting small little updates that they didn't need updates for, that it wasn't significant to them. Lots of other companies that bought from the company I was working for wanted to have the latest and greatest little features all the time, and were always paying every year for all these new little features added to it. Just like if you look, there's a large number of people still using Windows XP. They don't see any reason they need to go forward. And so they never went to 7, and they're not on 10. Whenever they get a new machine, they'll go to 10. But until they're not happy with that machine, they'll stay where they are. So do document it, put comments in there, and put those in there. They note in there that a lot of times it's a double slash will make it into a comment area. Some other languages use an asterisk or use a slash asterisk to mark the beginning and end of a comment. Okay? For our purposes, I think you can use just a double slash. If you did put any comments in, but you're not writing the programs, you're just designing, so you don't have to put comments into your design. Any questions on all of that? Because that is chapter 2. All got it all down? Make sure you do your program. Chapter 1 program is graded and returned.
Yeah, I just redid mine.
Did you just submit the submittal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because you didn't attach the file, right?
I attached it, but I didn't put my name. I put Hello World.
Oh, okay. Somebody else in here, one of you, did not attach a file. As a matter of fact, I know who it
I
is.
just.
You need to turn it back in with file attached.
Okay.
But all I got was blank. Okay?
Yeah.
That apparently you forgot to attach or something went wrong.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay?
It was like it might have been me, but I'm pretty sure I did it.
The other two of y'all are okay. Okay? So, and I just graded those right before I walked in here because I got a chance there to do a little bit of grading, so I graded some. So that was literally done just before I walked in the door.
Those discussions are 10 points apiece, right? The discussion boards, those discussions that we have, they're 10 points apiece, right?
I got invited to this, but
First one's on chapter 3, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. That's not
Because
possible.
if you've got to do the discussions or you'll lose 10 points on the assignment. I think is what that is, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I was looking at it a minute ago, and there it's blank. So I'll probably be the first one to post a discussion.
So somebody has to go first.
That's true.
And we're done on 3 yet, so none of you are going to have posted to 3 anyway at this point, because that's really doesn't pop up as assigned until next week, but you can go ahead and be doing now. So you can put yours out there, and then you got to wait for 2 others to put their first comment out for you to reply to them. Okay? And with only 4 of you in here, if some of y'all wait till the last minute, that means some of you other are going to have to wait till the last minute to have something to reply to. Okay? But I think most of my classes I've got it where it's 10 points of the assignment. Is that what I've got right there for that
Oh,
one?
yeah, that's what counts 10 points of your assignment. All 3
Okay.
posts must be done.
And you have to do all 3. If you don't do the post and the 2 replies, which can't be replying to yourself. Okay, I think I even said it's got to be to 2 different people, didn't I?
Yeah. But
So-
what if the other 2 people don't ever post, or what if 2 people don't? Yeah.
If 2 people don't post,
Oh, yeah, didn't you say you would give like the credit?
then I will give you all the credit.
Okay.
Those that did. If only you and Todd post, and y'all both reply to each other, and they don't post,
Mhm.
I will go ahead and give you your full 10 points when I grade on it, and they'll get theirs 0 of the 10 on theirs. Okay? But if you post and only reply to him, but don't do another reply, you're not going to get any points. You got to do 2 replies along with the post. Does everybody follow that?
Yeah.
It's not going to be a partial credit thing. It's 0 or 10 points. Okay? You got to do it all for the 10 or you get nothing. So that means the rest of the assignment's worth 90 points. Okay? As opposed to 100. So it's a total of 100 on the assignment. So it's just 10% of that assignment. And y'all got to do that, I think, in either 2 or 3 chapters. Chapter 3 and I think 2 other chapters.
Chapter 6.
6.
Chapter 6.
Okay? The other chapters, you don't have discussions to do. Okay?
Okay.
Warning also, which I posted out there in all of the courses yesterday,
What is it?
watch out on emails, that my emails, a number of students are reporting are going to the spam/junk folder. So do check your spam or junk, whatever it is it calls it in. I think it's calling it spam now. Calls it clutter in the email they give the faculty, but I think y'all's is called spam. Make sure you check that spam folder
Did you get flavor of-
regularly also, particularly if you sent me an email, look in there to see if my response went to spam. Everybody got that? And I have no control of that, but it's apparently decided. I knew it did it occasionally when I sent out the ones for DreamSpark. Imagine that sometimes those went to spam, and understood why it would sometimes do on that, because one of the ways it spots spam is if that a message has a whole bunch of addresses, even if it's on the BCC, which you can't ever see those addresses. That when I send out there at that point for a couple of days, 3 or 4 messages a day, they got 250, 300 addresses on it. It goes, wait a minute, that looks like a spammer to us.
Right, every time I got one of your emails, even last year, I never had a problem receiving them. I never had them in junk or spam. That was
But-
frustrating, you know.
But I've had a couple of people report that they were going there now, because I had one student said he hadn't seen any emails from me, and then when he had said something else and I'd said something, he contacted me on it by phone, and I said, check your spam folder, and he looked in there and he said, I've got a dozen emails from you sitting here in spam. All of them had gone to spam. Which is the reason why I also try to put some things that applies to the whole class, both in announcements and email it, because some of y'all don't always look at announcements, and then sometimes email doesn't get spotted as easily, and that if I put it both places, you're likely to catch it in a timely manner. All right, then I will let y'all go.